The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we come before you at the beginning of this legislative session, asking you to pour forth your grace upon these elected representatives. Give them your spirit, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and might, a spirit of knowledge and reverence for what is right, that they may faithfully and with wisdom accomplish their appointed task. We make this prayer in your powerful name. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Deacon Nathan Allen from the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. The Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. They'll get her. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 89th session, second day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Thursday, January 8th, 2015.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files 61 through 153.
First reading of House Files 61 through 153. Messages from the Senate.
Is this the resolution count? No, the resolutions are other messages.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the adoption by the Senate of the following Senate Concurrent Resolution herewith transmitted. Senate Concurrent Resolution number 2, a Senate Concurrent Resolution relating to parking space in the capital area for members of the legislature and staff, signed Joanne Zoff, Secretary of the Senate. Pepin moves that the rules be so far suspended that Senate Concurrent Resolution number 2 be now considered and placed upon its adoption.
I call on the member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin, to explain the motion.
Mr. Speaker and members, in order to adopt the concurrent resolution on parking and adjournment for more than 3 days, we need to suspend the rules. These are non-controversial resolutions. I appreciate your yes vote.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The motion prevails.
Pepin moves that Senate Concurrent Resolution number 2 be now adopted.
Do I need to call? Yep. The member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This resolution directs the Commissioner of Administration to reserve all parking spaces necessary for our members and staff at the legislature, and I appreciate your yes vote.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion prevails and the resolution is adopted.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the adoption by the Senate of the following Senate Concurrent Resolution herewith transmitted. Senate Concurrent Resolution number 3, a resolution relating to adjournment for more than 3 days. Signed, Secretary of the Senate Joanne Zoff.
I call on the member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin, to explain the motion.
Mr. Speaker and members, this resolution allows us to suspend our House rules and adjourn for more than 3 days. This is necessary because of the Martin Luther King holiday on Monday. I'd appreciate a yes vote.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion prevails.
Pepin moves that Senate Concurrent Resolution number 3 be now adopted.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin, to explain the resolution.
Mr. Speaker and members, we simply need to adopt the resolution to suspend our House rules so that we can adjourn for more than 3 days.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion prevails and the resolution is adopted.
No, you just read motion. There are copies of this on the desk.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions first.
I'll put this here in your desk.
Suspend the rules. Recall House File 43 immediately from committee. Takes 90 votes. Do you have a copy of House File 43? Okay. Okay. Can we have a copy?
There is a motion at the desk. The clerk will report the motion.
Winkler moves that the rules of the House be so far suspended that House File Number 43 be recalled from the Committee on Governmental Operations and Election Policy, be given its second and third readings, and be placed upon its final passage.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Winkler, to explain your motion.
Mr. Speaker, on January 31st, all of the campaign finance reports will be due from our campaigns for year-end, from all of the organizations that are required to disclose what they spent for and against us in the campaigns, from all of the various interested parties in Minnesota who wanted to spend money to influence the outcome of an election and have an influence on what happens here at the legislature. There will be some groups, however, who will not need to disclose how they got their money, who gave it to them, or how they spent it. Those groups are so-called nonprofit corporations, 501c4s, who can use a loophole in Minnesota's campaign finance law to avoid disclosing the sources of their contributions. Mr. Speaker and members, I would urge you to vote for suspension of the rules and advance this bill today so that by January 31st, we can pass a law in Minnesota that says that the people have a right to know who's paying for politics in Minnesota. And so, Mr. Speaker, I would request a roll call on that vote.
A roll call has been requested. Do I see 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I still have the floor.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank
Representative
you, Mr.
Winkler.
Speaker. Members, we don't know how much money is being spent in our campaigns because these organizations do not have to disclose. They're not Republican organizations, they're not Democratic organizations. They're just people who collect vast amounts of money and spend it in our campaigns. Reports are up to $12 million in independent expenditures in just Minnesota House races. After the experience our constituents have had with piles of mail, very questioning the honesty of our members, the integrity of our members, this body should take action now to pass this bill so that people know who paid for it. And it's especially important that we do this at the beginning of the legislation so that people can look at our actions over the next 5 months and over the next session and decide whether we were following the interests of the people or whether we were following the interests of those who paid for the campaigns that brought us here. Mr. Speaker, at our opening day, you looked out on the faces of the new members and you said that you thought that they should change the Minnesota House of Representatives instead of having the legislature change them. The question I would have for you, new members, is don't your constituents have a right to know who paid for your campaign? Don't they have a right to know who put all that mail into their mailboxes? Don't they deserve to know who's paying for influence at the state capitol? Don't your constituents deserve a representative who represents them? This is a choice, members. It's a choice to decide if you as a new representative want to represent your constituents in your district or if you want to become another politician who is just simply influenced by the big money that's drowning out the voice of the people. We need to act now, members, in order to have the information our constituents need to evaluate our actions here at the Capitol over the next 5 months and over the next 2 years. If we don't act now, that money stays secret. We continue to make decisions, and our constituents will be left in the dark. So, members, I would ask for a green vote.
On the motion to suspend the rules, the member from Anoka, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, I urge a red vote on this. I'm very honored to be the chair of the Government Operations and Elections Committee. We have not even had a meeting yet this session. I trust that Representative Winkler has probably put in a hearing request for this bill. But members, we also have, I think, somewhere around 26 members that are brand new to this body. And we have a more senior member putting a motion on the floor to say the committee process isn't important, what the public has to say isn't important on this bill, and we should just bring it up now and take his word for it that it's the right solution for Minnesota. So members, I ask that you respect the process and respect the Minnesota House, and that we vote no on this motion.
Any further discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? The member from Hennepin, Representative Winkler.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Sanders, you're right. It would be nice to go through the proper committee process. The problem is that won't result in a bill that results in reporting on January 31st, which is the deadline for everybody else except these few organizations that want to have a special exception to the law just for them, just for their donors, to hide the money. So it would be good if we could do this. But members, this bill has come to this legislature many times. The Senate has passed this bill. If we move today, we can put on record right now that the Minnesota House of Representatives believes that our constituents deserve to know who funded campaigns and that we are not subject to the special interest influence of secret money and backroom deals that makes so many people so distrustful of the things that we do here. If you believe that the public should trust you and what you do, vote green on this bill.
The member from Anoka, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know what? Nobody wants to have secret money, backroom filled doors, and we need to take this this sort of discussion through the proper channels, through the proper discussion. The DFL was in control of both the House and the Senate during the last biennium. There were folks on both sides of the aisle that did not think that this bill was ready for prime time, and I do not believe that bringing this bill forward today without going through the proper channels, without having the proper discussion, without allowing the public, our constituents, to weigh in on this bill is the proper thing to do to have and set forth the best policy for the state of Minnesota. So members, I ask for a red vote and urge members to move on through the actual process. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Thiessen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, first-term members, this is your chance. You won, and I know all of you understand the election you went through, saw lots and lots of mail coming in on your behalf and against your opponents. We don't know where that mail came in. I do know, however, that Minnesotans didn't like it. I think every one of us who went through one of those elections understands that Minnesota did not like it, and they, more importantly, don't like the lack of transparency. Now, you're going to be taking lots and lots of votes in the next several months about a lot of issues that affect Minnesotans. I would note that the very first bill that the House Republican caucus put out was corporate tax cuts. Not surprising, but that's the very first bill. That shows exactly what the priorities of this new Republican caucus are going to be. And I think your constituents deserve to know who spent $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 to get you elected. Because I'm sure what they're going to find out is a lot of folks with those same corporations that are benefiting from House File Number 1. We know that the Minnesota Action Network, Norm Coleman's organization, is already spending money right now against Democrats in a number of districts. We need to know where that money is coming from. We need to know who the donors, the sponsors of Norm Coleman are. We know that the Jobs Coalition spent lots and lots of money in the last election to defeat Democrats and to support Republican campaigns. And the same thing can, quite frankly, can be said about Democrats. The bottom line is our constituents deserve to know this. We're all about transparency in this body. That's what the Speaker said on the very first day. We want to understand exactly what's going on. We want our politics to be as transparent as possible. Well, first-term members, this is your chance. The very first vote, the very first substantive vote you're going to take on the House floor is whether your constituents deserve to know who is spending money in your campaigns. I think they ought to know. I think there absolutely ought to be a yes vote, and we can move forward on this.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members, and welcome freshmen. And I know many of you maybe have not had a committee meeting yet, and I really hope that we give you a chance to get acclimated, hear bills in committee, listen to your constituents, and sort of build up that knowledge so that when we do debate an important bill, that we have had time for the input from your constituents and the people of the state of Minnesota. So in welcoming the freshmen, I would hope that we'd vote red on this.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Turned into a lively debate, unexpected. I would encourage you to vote no on this bill. House File 43, I remember last session, I believe the same bill, not the same number perhaps, but the same bill was introduced by Representative Winkler, and that was when the Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, so it probably could have passed last year if it were in the appropriate shape. And I remember spending a great amount of time going through a bill very similar to this one. Members, this bill has time to move through the committee process if the chair so desires. I think there's a lot of issues that need to be discussed with this. Let's follow the committee process. Let's go through, find out, and argue the bill, the merits and the maybe not merits of the bill. And I just want to point out, Mr. Minority Leader, House File 1, it's a job-creating bill. We need some of those. We need good jobs in Minnesota. We're moving forward with that. With that, Mr. Speaker and members, I would encourage a no vote on the Winkler motion.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Thiessen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a few quick things. The urgency here is that we want to be able to understand what happened in the 2014 election, and the difference between last year and this year is we've now all gone through a cycle, an unprecedented election cycle, where people got a stack of literature, this thick in any number of districts, 20, 25 districts. This was a very different election than we've ever had in the state of Minnesota. Minnesotans didn't like it. They didn't show up to vote because of it, and we need to change that. And I hope that the Speaker and I and everybody on each side of the aisle can figure out in the next 2 years about how we engage our citizenry, because 50% turnout doesn't really work, and I think the kind of politics that we're trying to get at here is what happens there. But the most important thing is there is an urgency here so we can find out what happened in the 2014 election. And if you want to take the vote, members, this time that you want to hide the folks that spent money on you, you can take that vote today. That's absolutely okay. That's your prerogative if you want to wait for the process to go forward. But the fact of the matter is, if you wait, if you don't take up Representative Winkler's bill today, we won't have that chance, because January 31st is coming up very quickly.
Any further discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. Representative Allen votes aye. There being 54 ayes and 76 nays, the motion to suspend the rules is not adopted. Announcements. The member from Ramsey, Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members. Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, I actually have two announcements. One, DFL members of civil law will meet 15 minutes after session in room 208E. That's in the second floor research hallway, so 15 minutes after session. And my second announcement, Mr. Speaker, is remember on Thursday I told you that I'd announce again today of the St. Paul, Representative Erickson knows, the Welcome Back St. Paul party tomorrow night, 5 to 7:30. It's at the Science Museum. It's not at the Ordway. Don't go hang out at the Ordway, okay, because they'll wonder what you're doing. But if you do, you can just walk across the street to the Science Museum. We'll have valet parking. It's sponsored by the Visit St. Paul Foundation and also all the St. Paul legislators. We always have a good time. Hope to see you at the Science Museum tomorrow night at 5 on behalf of all members of the St. Paul delegation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further announcements? Seeing no further announcements, the member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin.
Mr. Speaker and members, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until noon on Wednesday, January 14th, 2015.
Representative Pepin moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12 o'clock noon, Wednesday, January 14th, 2015. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion prevails. Representative Pepin.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Pepin moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 12 o'clock noon, Wednesday, January 14th, 2015.